Okay, great. Good afternoon and welcome to Turning Workers into Owners in the Design Economy. We're glad to have you join us as part of Design Week. My name is Shelley Miller, and this is an Owner to Owners event sponsored by Employee Ownership NYC and the New York City Deputy Mayor's Office of Strategic Initiatives. We have a wonderful panel discussion planned today to help you explore employee ownership. If you are a business owner interested in employee ownership to keep your business open, grow your business, increase productivity, save jobs, recruit and retain employees, or plan your exit, Owner to Owners is here to help you at no cost to you. You can access our city funded support by visiting our website today at ownertoowners.nyc. That's the word owner spelled out OWNER, the numeral 2, the word. I'm sorry, am I muted? I just got a notification that I had been put on mute. Hello?
You're working now.
Okay. Can you tell me where you last heard me?
You were just going over the website URL.
Okay, great. Thank you. So again, the website is ownertoowners.nyc, and the phone number you can call is 646-363-6592. Our panel discussion will be led today by Sam Young from the Office of Deputy Mayor J. Philip Thompson. Sam is the Deputy Director of Inclusive Economic Development and Business Innovation in the Office of Deputy Mayor Thompson. We will also have a short Q&A after the discussion. So during the panel discussion, please type any questions you may have in the chat. Sam, take it away.
Thanks, Shelley. Like Shelley said, my name is Sam Jung, and I work on behalf of Deputy Mayor Thompson to advance inclusive economic and business development innovations in the service of closing the racial wealth gap. Sincere thanks for making the time to join us in what I know will be a generative discussion. I want to begin by saying that it's important to note that this NYCX design event is situated within a large inflection point for our society. Across our economy, the growing disconnect between work and wealth and a societal decrease in worker power has been coupled with unmitigated public and private investments into a few places, sectors, and corporations that have resulted in stagnant incomes, declining wealth, and magnified social and economic disparities for the majority of communities that fall unevenly along lines of race. For the design industry in particular, these dynamics have been exacerbated by the rising gig economy, which has created a precarity around work, particularly for creative professionals, impacting job stability, income levels, and quality of life. Precisely at the same time, design has largely been accepted as producing premium economic value for markets, politics, and society alike. While design has had social impact, unmitigated investments and growth across the creative fields have compounded inequities in ways that upholds the cult of the charismatic, messianic design genius, a la Steve Jobs, Paula Scher, and Bjarke Ingels, which occludes the actual labor of design workers and their administrative and business development counterparts, thus justifying the continued underpaid or unpaid labor and contingent hours that these workers conduct across the board. These dynamics are particularly important for New York City's design economy, which has 65% more designers than any other metro area in the US, and thus warrants a conversation about how we might further advance equity through reconceptualizing creative work and the attendant business structures in the field to bolster worker power, realize real wealth generating opportunities, and advance inclusion imperatives through broadening shared ownership opportunities. To dig into this conversation, I'm joined here by leading practitioners from the realms of graphic design, tech development, and architecture to dig into the topic today. And they include Greg Mihalko and David Kassen from Partner and Partners, Ethan Wynn from CoLab, and Nicholas Mcdermott of Future Expansion. Greg Mihalko and David Kassen from Partner and Partners are founders and co-owners of Partner and Partners, a worker-owned design practice focused on print, exhibition, interactive, and identity work with clients and collaborators in art, architecture, government, and activism. David Kassen is a designer, artist, and printmaker, and a co-owner of Partner Partners. Greg Mihalko is a creative director and artist. He's a founder and co-owner of Partner Partners. Ethan Nguyen is co-owner and senior strategist at CoLab, a transnational worker-owned digital agency focused on using participatory design and collaborative development to build impactful web and mobile technologies. And last but not least, Nicholas Mcdermott is a partner at Future Expansion, which was founded with a desire to generate a new body of work for and from a changing city. He currently teaches graduate level design studios at Yale. In addition to his role at Future Expansion, he is a board member with the collaborative practice Design Advocates. Welcome, everybody. To kick us off, I just wanted to note that while I will ask you all questions, invite informal discussion here, so feel free to talk to each other too in this discussion and ask each other questions as they may come up. I first wanted to start with David and Greg. Can you begin by telling us about your firm, its business model, and why you decided to pursue employee ownership?
Yeah, I can start us off with that. As you said, we're a small multidisciplinary design studio. So like most design studios, we're a service-based business, and we mostly are doing web design and web development for our clients. We don't like sell physical products, obviously. And our decision, so in 2018, I was graduating from college and feeling like pretty hopeless as a designer. The prospect of working on commercial projects in a top-down type of structure seemed really bleak, coming from a background in like art activism and printmaking. So finding P&P was kind of like a really amazing thing for me because there was already this horizontal structure in place, and like in terms of the hierarchy, or lack of hierarchy, I should say. And over the course of 2 years, I went from being an intern to a full-time employee and then to a co-owner, which I think is kind of incredible for being right out of college. And yeah, worker ownership kind of just like put our beliefs, like I would say shared values, into practice. Shared values between there's 5 of us, Greg, me, and then 3 others, Lulu, Zach, and Eric, who aren't here. But yeah, Greg, do you want to talk a little bit more about that decision to transition?
Yeah, I'll just touch on it briefly. So I came to New York in 2010. I was working for a few agencies that did have a structure like Devika described, a kind of like unambiguous boss with a sort of like hierarchy. And at the same time, or a year after that, Occupy Wall Street was starting, and I was going down to Zuccotti Park and like observing and kind of like the mutual aid and kind of horizontal organizing happening there. At the same time, I was getting involved in Interference Archive and met Josh McPhee from Just Seeds, who started a cooperative artist collective, Just Seeds. And so all of that was really informing my decision to really understand like this is not the only way to work together in the way that I was experiencing and living out. And so I started P&P, with the intention to work on different types of projects. And then like when 5 of us were in the room and sharing these kind of values and ethic and understanding, it just made sense to really cement all of that in a cooperative structure. And so, I made a literal call to Nick Knock, and then through a couple of referrals, we met ICA Group. ICA Group kind of helped us with the legal and understanding really what it meant to be a cooperative. And that was great. And so in January 2020, we all signed the papers and we're now an official co-op. But just to say that this is now, that experience, it was a little bit fractured, and now it's a lot easier with owner to owners because you can just go to the website, fill out a form, and someone from that network that the city is kind of working with will reach out to you as a business owner and help you through that process.
Great, awesome. And for our participants just joining, that website is owner2owners.nyc. Thanks for that, David and Greg. Ethan, do you mind answering the same question, telling us a little bit about your firm, its business model, and why you decided to pursue employee ownership?
Yeah, sure. I love listening to Devika and Greg's story because our story is so parallel. just the incorporation was around 2010, not 2020, but it's really the same exact sense of I think that bleakness really informed a group of folks who had freelancers or small LLC organizations doing design development work, who had been through the startup technology world and understood how it can be really toxic and can really exploit workers, and felt there's a real need for alternate models, and that the ways that we produce things really matters. That the systems and organizations we create really matter. So Collab Co-op started as a worker-owned tech design and development agency with four founding members, and really rooted in principles of sustainability, full human participation and growth, and consensus governance. And from that, I think that's where we started from. And then I think what has really sustained us along the path are just the wealth of resources available in the co-op ecosystem. Just the mentorship and the advising and the network of the cooperative world, the recruitment, both the ability to meet like-minded folks who are really excited about engaging and deeply investing in being part of Collab, as well as the clients, who really see what we're doing, resonate with it, and understand how it brings quality to our work together. And definitely over the past year, we've been appreciating the resilience. The fact that we can't just barrel through difficult conversations, difficult moments with hierarchical management, but actually have to work through things together, has really paid long-term dividends.
Thanks, Ethan. I think that fact that you try to create an organization that strives for the full human participation and growth of the co-owners that you are surrounded by and the communities that you work with is inspiring, especially given the context out of which both partners and Collab have emerged, really of disenfranchisement of work and possibly exploitation. And so I think that connects really well, Nick, to the kind of design advocacy work that you've been doing as of late. And I'm wondering if you could speak to how your work broadly is intervening within the architecture field regarding conceptions of work and labor.
Well, I've been interested in, I think you hit on a lot in your introduction, a lot of the things that also stimulate me when I'm thinking about these things, the relationship of, the sort of the glorification of the entrepreneur and the idea of the startup, but the kind of disconnect between that and just what it is to be a small business. Or there's these ways in which I think in our kind of current economy, or just in America in general, we're very comfortable with, we learn to live with a lot of contradictions. And it's those things that, when something like this pandemic happened, that the kind of the system of contradictions, gets put into your face in ways that can be really uncomfortable. And so I think I had been thinking about these things for a long time. I had taught I taught a design studio at the New Jersey Institute of Technology on the Granger movement in 2017, which was really, inspiring to learn about. That was a moment in which farmers, kind of after the Civil War, were small farmers. The trains were allowing industrial farming to really get started for the first time, and small farmers were fighting for their existence. And so they started forming these Granger movements, or essentially co-ops, in order to, realize a lot of the advantages that bigger industrial farmers had, but also to begin to form community, and also as ways to, it's lonely being a farmer out on the plains, especially when your livelihood is threatened. And so, to then, flash forward to 2020, to when suddenly the city's in crisis, and, we're seeing not dissimilar things happening. Certain people feeling complete comfort and others feeling complete distress in that moment. And so I think Design Advocates, which is the group that I founded, or I've been a part of since really its founding in March of 2020. I'm on the board with, there's a couple hundred people now involved, which are small architecture offices and individual designers, really trying to both advocate for ourselves as small offices, but also to advocate for the city and for the parts of the city that were really struggling, and to see that the designer is a kind of empowered person within the city who could very much help in a crisis that's so explicitly spatial as COVID was, in which we're told to sort of separate, stay apart, and all of those things. And suddenly the interior of buildings is a scary place to be, and we're all forced sort of outside. And so how do you deal with that? And yeah, so that, really the advocacy work from DA sprang from that, but it just really nested, I think, quite well with these things that had always been, or had for a while been thinking about in terms of other structures for the way that we work.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you're pointing to the structural elements of the architecture field that need some advocacy to address. I know that there is rampant, underpayment, not payment of junior designers, particularly because within that field, passion is kind of almost abused as a vehicle by which to extract more work out of particularly architects, right? Without proper attention to workplace conditions, wages. And so I think this shift that you're pointing to around advocacy and making sure that we're looking beyond just the focus of entrepreneurs, really, to me, is really interesting, because it forces a conversation about how workers need to be reconceptualized within that field, and the possibilities that ownership really affords, right? Discreetly within architecture. And so I think on that note, I'll turn it back to PMP, and just wanted to get a sense of how employee ownership has impacted your projects, your culture, your bottom line, or any other things that you want to point to.
Yeah, I think like one of the things I wanted to point out was that, we transitioned right before the pandemic hit the States, like in a really terrible way. And so we had to that being us transitioning in January, and then just having a few months in the office, and then having like this totally new way of working, and like kind of navigating that whole situation. We had to make a lot of decisions about safety, working from home, hiring, rent, and that was something that we could kind of share together and make those decisions together. And ultimately, we were actually able to expand our network in 2021 and did pretty well against all odds, which is kind of, not something that you hear often, I think, about businesses during this past year. So that was something that came of, transitioning. But then in terms of the culture, we all really have autonomy and ownership over our work, but at the same time, we are able to lean on each other and make collaborative decisions together and work together on so many projects, obviously, and make those high level decisions together. So that's something really important and meaningful to me. And then even just being a pretty young designer in the field, and being a co-owner, it becomes this thing that I want to just spread the message all the time. So when we transitioned, I was actually in India for a month visiting family. And when I signed all the papers and made it official, and my dad was there with me, and he kept telling all the relatives we would meet that I was a junior partner at my firm. And I think that was obviously him trying to relate to all these older Indian men about the contemporary work culture, right? And that made me seem like this elevated person. But to me, that actually felt almost degrading. And I was I felt really strongly about telling him no, this is how you talk about my role. I'm a co-owner. I share this business with 5 other people, and I don't know. So there's a pride that comes with it too, which I think is important and is definitely helping to spread the message. But I think Greg also has some other feelings about why it benefits us.
Well, yeah, I mean, all that stuff holds true, and I think it's really, I don't know, it's really important to me that everyone that I work with, and I can't believe companies don't operate this way. And I think you can kind of build a company and think that you're doing this, but it's always a little bit different when it's not actually cooperative. But having a shared like sense of ownership over your work and what you're doing and why you're doing it every day is like a lot different than like subtly knowing that like the only thing you're getting out of this business is a wage and a salary, and at the end of the day all the profits and success are going to go to a few people that have a true ownership over it. It fundamentally changes whenever you're all sort of there in that same position. And then just for me personally, like the risk and stress of running a small business is is spread out. You know, it's hard to run a business by yourself. It's hard to run a business and like have to worry about like keeping the lights on, but like it's still hard with co-owners, but it's not as hard. It's not, you have other people that you can really lean on. And I think that other also sort of is a subtle change. It really fundamentally changes like how you approach your work and how I feel day to day.
Yeah, I think the fact that you all were able to expand your networks within one of the craziest years that we've experienced in recent history, and that it actually also afforded you all the empowerment in your work, it didn't compromise the design, and really actually shares the rewards and risks of businesses, is heartening to hear. I'll turn now to Ethan. Can you speak a bit about how employee ownership has impacted CoLab? And can you also speak about your design methodology and also how that ethos of shared action, shared ownership really impacts the ways in which you engage stakeholders?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, as far as being a cooperative is so it's so much part of our DNA and so important to our work. You know, I think the impact, you know, we've gone from those four founding members to now an 18 member co-op with a network of folks who are also member track, and so you know that expansion has been really amazing. And you know, actually last year, as part of, you know, I think it's not coincidental that while we were going through this challenging time, we actually overhauled our membership structure to do a multi-stakeholder kind of format that allows us to bring in more members, kind of share that, you know, that burden, be in it together. It felt really important as we were doing that, and it really, I think, it really worked. I think where it shows up, you know, a lot of our project work is with, you know, it's whether it's building kind of cooperative infrastructure projects like the Up and Go project, and you know marketplaces to really promote cooperative businesses and cooperative business process, or working with a lot of kind of larger kind of nonprofits or associations where you have multiple stakeholders, often a coalition of folks coming together to fund some of these projects, or even just our enterprise, you know, work where we're working with universities or other places. We find that the way that we show up in terms of foregrounding, we've been actually practicing a lot of sociocratic practices recently. So kind of bringing in some of the sociocracy and circles and facilitation techniques, and being really, really intentional about including all of the stakeholders, identifying who needs to be at that table and making sure that they are included, and then having processes for actually running kind of inclusive design processes that bring them in. We really see design as a form of governance. It's one of the places where, you know, whether we're doing, you know, if it's a graphic design or a systems design, it's where folks often can have their voice heard in the creation of technology that might really impact them. And so that's really important. And you know, it's definitely the other place it shows up for us is partnership. So we partner with a lot of other design firms. We partner with a lot of other, you know, other groups, and definitely just that ethos of collaboration is helpful for partnerships generally, and partnerships with other co-ops are amazing because we really share that, and that's really been one of the special pieces.
Yeah, and Ethan, just because we have a little bit of time, I'm wondering if you could explain a little bit about the Up and Go platform and what that entailed and what it is, as a way to illustrate your methodology.
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. So it's upandgo.coop is the site, and we developed that in partnership with the Center for Family Life in Brooklyn and the Robin Hood Foundation, and it's a marketplace for cooperative providers of home cleaning services, basically. And so Center for Family Life has done amazing work organizing home cleaning co-ops around the city. And they really stand in stark contrast to some of the gig economy platforms that do similar features. And interestingly, we did, so where we started was actually, we did a long, in-depth user research phase with them, and really understood that folks were looking and really yearning for service providers who had more integrity, who had real investment in the work, who weren't, who had a sense of ownership and pride, and that was a major um, opportunity for cooperatives in that space. And so we worked together then with the through a number of design iterations, prototyping and designing both with the cooperative members, understanding what their needs were from the platform. And that was out that they're a diverse group as well as with the end users and with the cooperative developers. And really had this kind of three stakeholder group design process that we used to design the system, both in terms of its logistics, how it would actually work in implementation, as well as how it would present the cooperatives to end users. And it's been a wonderful success. We're really proud of it.
Yeah, I'm so impressed by that example because it really illustrates how community stakeholders can be a part of and actually integral to a design process and the product that enables ownership of a platform that really is enabling them better economic self-determination. And I think the thing that you're pointing to, as you said, like inclusive design practice as governance, is also really inspiring, because if we look at a fractal approach to things that we practice in our work, in our CBOs that we might be a part of, actually point to different possibilities for how we might manage our society. So I just take really great inspiration from that. On that point of inspiration and collaboration, Nick, I'll turn to you. And you've done some important work throughout the pandemic with the architecture firms that you had mentioned earlier about thinking through how best to weather this past year. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the insights you garnered thus far, particularly around secondary co-ops and the architecture field.
Right. Yeah, I think you're referring to the kind of the notion of the cooperative network, which is something that we've been quite interested in at Design Advocates, but also in other conversations that I've been involved with. And it's really an idea that grew out of the architecture lobbies sort of work on this, and thinking about what is the right way for for labor within architecture to be, to use their word, less precarious, and the idea that really after a while realizing that small firms and large firms that were needed to have different strategies, and so one of the strategies for the small firm that is this idea of the network cooperative, and in which a group of small firms get together and form a kind of network in which there's a certain set of shared resources, but more than just shared resources, like a kind of sharing of information, a sort of leveling of the playing field in a way, so that sharing compensation, all of those things in ways that produce more transparency, really, and where there may have been lots of, whether it's tacit or outright kind of competition between small offices, in order to find ways that actually just more collaborative relationships can get built up between small offices. And so that's been something that I think for me has been a really interesting idea, and something that we've seen that does work in there are places around the world. There's a group in Australia called Architeam, which has been doing this successfully for a long time, bring a lot of benefits to the small offices that are a member of that, promoting in a way design itself to the sort of general public as one of the kind of overall strategies, but also then trying to build up, as I'm saying, this sort of a kind of different structural relationship between small offices, which often are, I mean, Greg's sort of describing those feelings, and the kind of moments of being scared as a small business owner that I think a lot of people you just deal with when you know what your cash flow looks like and things like that. So yeah, so the network cooperative is not, it's not a true workers cooperative, right? It's not saying that there's worker ownership within the organization, within those firms necessarily, although it doesn't preclude it. And I think that in fact that the the long-term goal would be that the two things would happen sort of hand in hand, that there could be a kind of network between offices as well as more worker ownership within offices.
Yeah, I think what you're pointing to is really powerful because you're essentially saying that in collaboration, small firms can be more competitive, and that you don't necessarily need to engage in a cutthroat dog eat dog mentality in order to be successful. You can actually retain the individual identity and practice of an architecture firm, but actually leverage economies of scale through cooperation for resource efficiencies, cost efficiencies, and I think importantly for transparency into how different operations are run, so that we're not continually perpetuating these workplace dynamics that might lead to a poor working environment, unequal wages, et cetera. So I think, yeah, our office too is not worker cooperative purists. I think we take the expansive definition and view of shared ownership to be broadly impactful and beneficial for society, particularly for the exact reasons that you're naming around being collaborative as a form of resilience and competitiveness for social impact, right? So thank you for that, Nick. And the last formal question that I have is the same for all of our panelists. And we'll start with PMP again. How does employee ownership or shared ownership, what do you think that business form can offer your respective fields? Some animating questions to help you think through that is, how does it impact good design? What is its relationship to the product that you ultimately offer your clients and to your respective fields? Or how might we use it to address inequities that we really run into across the creative industries? And we'll start there. So Greg, we'll start with you and Devika, and then we'll work our way down.
Yeah, no, I think the first thing is kind of what Nick is talking about. There, and we've mentioned this before, like there's a lot of pressure to do things new and interesting all the time. And I think that pressure is largely comes out of capitalism and the competition that it breeds. And so when you're in a sort of cooperative environment, shared ownership environment, I think that there's a sense of confidence in your work that you don't necessarily get out of like a capitalist competitive environment, where you're not so worried about doing something new and fashionable just for the sake of doing something new and fashionable. You're doing something that really is meaningful and it solves a problem, but may not get like the kind of glitzy attention that we're used to right now. So I think that side of like impacting the design field is kind of worthwhile to think through long term. And then the kind of evaluation of what is good design, I think would really shift and should shift in the future, and especially in our minds, like Ethan was saying, like taking into consideration how something is made and produced, and not and who is doing the work, and recognizing that whole process, as opposed to one partner of a company getting most of the recognition, and that they're represented because they're famous and because they are constantly getting this attention. It is reproduced as an example of good design. And I think what that does is perpetuates this idea that like young designers, they have to go through that motion. They have to go through the churn of a singular genius, putting them through the ringer in order to become worthwhile as a designer in the future and get their own sort of name stamped on some work potentially. And so I think that to me, that we need to stop doing that. We need to stop propping those examples of design up and start focusing attention on the holistic design, the holistic sort of process and production of a work or a design project. And then I think unfortunately, like right now, and you mentioned at the beginning, is very, very well put. This, the gig economy and us being freelancers and things like Fiverr. And I just read yesterday in AIGA, we were just in an article in AIGA also posted an article about how Fiverr just bought Working Not Working, which was supposed to be this like very elite freelance, website, but Fiverr just bought that, and Fiverr has really perpetuated and drastically stratified people and sort of performing very, very low wage design work for long hours and doing a lot of it. And I think, unfortunately, that's also kind of seeping into our culture that, like, this is the only way that we're going to get by is just by being a freelancer, working on tons of different stuff all the time. And like, all of us are sitting here, and I think the point is to just like represent that that's not the case, and another way of working is possible, and we want to be sure that people understand and know that. That was very long-winded, but I think that that was my sort of like spiel.
I'm living for it. I'm happy to turn to Devika.
No, I think I pretty much don't have too much more to add to what Greg just said. I think we're on the same page with this kind of thing. But that also, employee ownership and like that collaborative model lends itself so well to the design industry, specifically the graphic design industry, because you're already working with people, you know what I mean? Like, it's already a collaborative process to begin with, right? A creative process to begin with. So it kind of just makes sense, especially for P&P, like 5 people working together on projects constantly. Like, why wouldn't you just all have an equal share in it? So yeah, that's kind of the only thing I would add.
Yeah, I think just really co-signing there, I think really dismantling this myth that young designers, young professionals have to go through this abusive rite of passage to gain notoriety as a starchitect or a design genius is just something that we definitely have to dismantle and abolish, and really move towards like a holistic process of and understanding that design as a whole, inclusive of its design workers, the stakeholders that it impacts in the society that we want to make interventions in, really deserve more, right? And I think that what you're speaking to about the gig economy and this is actually a race to it's catalyzing a race to the bottom, right? And I think worker ownership, as you're pointing to, it just makes sense, like you're saying, Devika, in the design space, but it creates a solid floor and a standard by which I think we could really use as a litmus of job quality, of workplace conditions, of ownership. And I think what you're pointing to as good design, because good design, from what I'm hearing, is actually made better through collaboration, right? And just maybe just switch up the order. I'll turn it to Nick. Yeah, what do you think? Shared ownership, collaboration, metaphor for the field there.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. Like, I think these answers are so inspiring. I think this conversation is so inspiring. And, like we do, you ask, we willingly subject ourselves to things like the gig economy, right? These are glamorized things. These aren't things that are seen as like, as this is the future, right? I mean, that's but it's in a sense, I think, that is really, you guys are bringing this out, but that's the contrast between the gig economy, in which it's a complete separation of labor from capital ownership in general, versus the cooperative or other forms in which we understand that it's very clear, if you read someone like Piketty, or that the way to build value and wealth is through ownership of capital, and that's the only way it happens anymore in this country. And so, but this separation seems very natural at the same time. So I think it's great here in this conversation to listen to all of you guys make that. I think so. To say that so clearly, and it's hand in hand with the idea that I make these big claims sometimes, and but like, America shows that we're a society of consumption, not production in a lot of ways, right? Like, That's how we prospered, and that was always, that's, you know, our ad culture, and that's the kind of thing that we valorize over anything. Like, we don't even mind seeing wages drop as long as people can still buy cheap goods, you know, like it's okay. But I think we're hitting a kind of crisis point of those kind of that sort of way of thinking, and which and you know, for the people in this panel, probably, you know, it's like seeing the fields and the things that we care about so much being subjected more to that kind of thing, which used to be maybe for other things, you know, like you know, fast food and stuff, but now suddenly it's fast design, and I think that's really scary. And we search for other ways to put, you know, to find value in the things that we do in order to, you know, just, we know that there's other values in the things we do, but it's hard to, you know, you have to stake that claim, and you have to really prove that to people. And so I think that's really the struggle, and that's what this tool and what you guys are doing is so great. You know, architecture is a little different than graphic design in the sense there's more capital involved. It takes longer. It's, you know, it involves more people with more kinds of expertise, larger teams, you know. And so I think in architecture, to me, that's why the cooperative network is seeming so exciting at the moment. It's the way that there are plenty of places where, you know, the kinds of smaller design firms can make big contributions, but they can't get a seat at the table because they don't have the right, you know, makeup within their office in order to do it, even if they have everything but the most superficial things. And so that's what the network cooperative, I think, in some ways can really, if it's done well, can begin to address, can begin to kind of build up credibility between offices to go after the kinds of projects that, honestly, I think small firms can bring more social value, more all kinds of value to. And that's what I also hope that Design Advocates has been a kind of first proof of concept of that three firms working together, we just collaborate. We don't compete with each other. We don't have problems with each other. We just get the work done. And so that's been really great.
Yeah, I love how you're speaking to like grounding architects' passion and like desire to find value in their work and field within this kind of larger, broader trend of consumerism impacting the field through fast design, and how that further creates a split between architecture work and wealth, and that through first conceptualizing architecture work as labor, and then labor as being connected to shared ownership opportunities as a vehicle and a genealogy, if you will, that we could all follow to, yeah, create a better work environment, to create competitiveness through collaboration, and to create the field that I think you believe can be realized through equity, is really salient there. And last but not least, Ethan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this question. What can employee ownership offer like the digital tech development space?
Sure. I mean, this is a hard crew to go last in, because I just resonate so much with everyone else has said. And you know, that was my first thought was, you know, I think that the biggest thing that that the cooperative structure can do for, you know, at a larger scale is just open up the space of possibility. You know, just to understand that, you know, nothing in what we're building and designing is a foregone conclusion. You know, that every agent has agency within these processes, has significance, you know, has a right to participate in them, and you know, we're not just subject to them. And that is a sort of you know, it's just a fundamental, you know, change of frame, which I think is very profound in how it shows up in the work. I love, Sam, your evocation of kind of the fractal nature of these things and how it shows up at both the very small, you know, small scales and the very large scales. And I think that at a very concrete level, you know, in the space of developing technology, I think that cooperative practices, even before you get to cooperative structure, offer a lot. You know, thinking about how we come together, how we organize teams, how we're accountable to one another, how we apportion work, how we include, you know, how we ensure that there is that everyone is kind of is in consensus in their participation. I think all of those things are really important and valuable within the cooperative world and cooperative tech and design world, as well as more generally. And that's definitely something that we're seeing as well, is that a lot of the practices and principles that we came to approaching this in terms of this full human growth and cooperative lens we're seeing them more and more often, even in the really much larger companies. Lots of HR departments are taking them on as practices, trying to inculcate them in those contexts. And I think that that's all. It's really wonderful and really important to see that. And I think there's a lot of benefit. And I think that also that there's lots of ways that we can collaborate and be more equitable in our collaborations through association, through cooperatives, and the cooperative ownership structure. Kind of provides a lot of, for lack of a better word, efficiencies in realizing those principles in the work. And I think right now it's really clear this is a time of such great transformation, and there's a real searching for new things. I think we're seeing it in the kinds of financial, decentralized technologies, decentralized financial systems. We're seeing it in terms of new focus on inclusion and accountability. And I think that really it's a real right moment for cooperatives to be a part of that.
Yeah, I know you said it was hard to close it out, but Ethan, that was really beautiful. I think cooperatives, that's expanding what we know is possible, and then really speaking to the step-by-step nature that you can take to a different ownership structure that begins with just the practices, right? Like you don't have to overnight become a cooperative, but these principles can really start with just how you relate to each other, how you realize workplace democracy practices, and then just the impacts that shared ownership has on the business bottom line in terms of efficiencies, innovation, and I think importantly racial justice is something that I took away from what you just said. So I hope I've been keeping to time. I will say a deep bow of gratitude for all of you all. I just have been so inspired by the work that you all are doing and the leadership that you are really embodying in your respective fields, and hope that the participants have taken away a lot from what you've said, and just thank you so much. Please hang around. We're going to have a question and answer session shortly, but for people who just joined or joined halfway through, please do put in questions into the chat box. The resources that we've been talking about that our city sponsors are sponsored is called Owner to Owners. You can reach us at owner2 owners plural.nyc. And I'll hand it over to Shelley to go through in a deeper manner what we are offering, and then we'll round it out with Q&As from the audience so that you all can ask your questions to the panelists.
Okay, thank you, Sam. And thanks to all of the speakers. That was truly inspirational. So, as our speakers have illustrated today, employee ownership is a powerful tool for business owners, workers, and communities. Owner to Owners is committed to helping business owners explore this as an option for success, whether success looks like a fair market price, tax benefits, saving jobs, or improving business operations. Owner to Owners provides a complete range of high-touch services to handhold business owners and workers through each step of the process. We want to ensure that businesses are successful for the long term. Some of our services include an initial consultation and eligibility assessment, a business valuation, a business readiness assessment, access to capital, guidance through the sales process, and training and education for founders, managers, and staff to support a successful ownership transition. Next slide. Find out if employee ownership is right for you. Call today to start your free consultation, All of our services are offered at no cost to business owners, or visit our website at owners2owners.nyc. As Sam mentioned to you before, that's the word owner spelled out, OWNER, the numeral 2, the word owners again with the S on the end, .nyc to request that consultation, or you can just call us directly at 646-363-6592 to get started. Now we want to give you a chance to ask any questions that you have for the panel or of the owner to owners team. So let me look to see, is there anything in the chat box there? Okay, so we'll wait to have some questions come in. I wanted to ask a question myself from a Partners and Partners. Greg, I was curious about, how you felt like emotionally as a person who owned the company to a person who's staying on and being an equal owner with all of the other new worker owners.
Yeah.
Greg, if I can just add there, if you can explain kind of the process on a more nitty gritty level that you went through to convert after that, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Shelley, like as I mentioned before, I feel a lot more relaxed staying on with a bunch of other people that are going to help me out running the company. And like to get into it, really technically what happens is like all the people that come on are actually technically buying the company from me and my brother who are 50-50 owners. So, I feel like I got a fair market kind of like price for my work for the 5 or 6 years that I started the company on my own. And I was actually I didn't understand that was the way that this would work until I talked to ICA Group and kind of understood the transition process. And I was ready to just give it up for free, and just because I like thought that that's what you do and that's what I would do, but no, there's a whole valuation process. You understand the value of your clients, the work that you're doing, and then through over sort of a period of time, our loan is like 5 years. The business's profits pay for both profit sharing and the loan to my brother and I, and so it feels it was like really interesting. I learned a lot getting to that point of that deal, quote unquote. But it just feels really good. Like it feels good on that sense, but also good to like have 4 other people or 3 other people join that really are invested enough to be a part of that and to want to like contribute. And like David was saying, we were lucky enough last year to both profit share with each other and be like totally up to date on our loan. Like, so we really feel like great. I don't know how else to explain it. We feel good.
Absolutely. So I see a question that came in, and this is to anyone of our speakers who wants to address it. Does anyone have advice for growing a studio into this type of business model? Growing from one person or a freelancer to a small owner team? Anyone want to take that? Oh, no volunteers.
David, we can. I mean, I can talk about it, and then you can jump in. Because we were one. I was one person, and then another person joined, and we had another partner that since left. And I think the advice is, continue to put out there and externalize the work that you want to be doing. It was kind of a conscious effort for us to like be working on certain things and then be externalizing those things. We did other projects that paid the bills and fed us and stuff, but we really made sure to like externalize ourselves in a way that like attracted clients and more clients and the values that we wanted to be doing. And then, slowly but surely that work attracts the kind of people you want to be around. And so, we didn't have a bunch of I don't know, weirdos come into the studio and start working with us on really weird projects that we didn't want to be doing anyway. And so like we didn't attract the kind of people that like we wouldn't really want to be friends with. So I think my advice would be, I know it might be hard, but try to work on things and promote the things that you want to be doing, and then talk about that stuff with people you want to be around. And then I think naturally your studio will grow to a place where that you want to be in.
All right. Um, this might be a good question for collab. Let me throw it out there. It's to anyone. Another audience question. I don't have an existing studio and haven't run a business before with other employees other than myself, but I am interested in pursuing this model for the future. Would you suggest it's easier to start out directly as a co-op without any prior traditional experience?
Sure. I mean, I can take a a stab at that briefly. I think there's a lot of benefits to that. In that, we've noticed like that the cooperative world, does have all these really wonderful resources available to help you thrive as a business owner in a way that I think is really supportive and really great. And I think there's nothing better than especially finding some like-minded folks to start a cooperative with. And there are lots of great co-ops out there that you might want to join and learn a lot from. At Collab, we've had a few folks who have been members at Collab for some time and have gone on to start their own cooperatives, and we're really, that's one that, it's something it feels really, really great to see them thrive and to see them grow. And I think there's a lot of value to learning through participation in an established co-op.
Yeah. Ethan, I think I'm going to throw this out to you too. And I think other members of the speaker panel can also maybe address it. There's been a lot made of what's called the silver tsunami, all of the baby boomers who tend to own most of the businesses, the small businesses in particular, and mid-size, and how so many of them are leaving. So I heard a lot of the discussion kind of center around some of the, let's call it, I don't want to use the word exploitation. So what's another word of the kind of undesirable way, a way that doesn't feel very nurturing of how these traditional firms have run. What do you think is the likelihood that the owners of these firms would have an interest in passing these firms on to their employees who might want to use a model like this and improve that situation?
So I'd like to start here, Shelley, because I was thinking as soon as I said that word exploitative, I thought about it, and there is real exploitation in our economy right now, and there are platforms that are starting that are exacerbating that issue, and we really do have to engage it directly. We have to think about how we're going to make different systems, and it's definitely a spectrum. And I think also, that there are a lot of folks who I think who founded businesses in that generation who have done wonderful work creating more equitable workplace environments, and for whom it has been really important to them to have different practices. But I think for probably many reasons, they didn't follow. They didn't form those organizations as cooperatives, and so I think that one thing that definitely has I've seen a number of businesses I think fit that kind of profile you're describing there, of folks who I think like if they were starting now, maybe they would have started co-ops, and that they really want to do something different, and they've tried to do something different in their small and medium-sized businesses. And we all know, I think everyone who's part of a co-op knows that the kind of the countervailing winds are always against you, always pushing you towards kind of a more conventional, more kind of extractive approach. And so you're always, you know, working to hold your values central. And the big thing for those folks, I think, you know, who have invested so much in their companies, is that, you know, having the cooperative structure there, I think, really helps nurture and helps establish and cement the work they put into creating different kinds of workplaces for future generations. You know, it's the best thing you can do to make sure that that it continues to be more of an evolved business.
And Shelley, to that point, I'll just quickly add, I'm mindful of time, but I think worker ownership has different implications for different design fields. I know within architecture, state laws mandate that all co-owners have the same professional licensure and certifications, so which makes it hard for an architecture firm to become a formal worker co-op, which is why I do think that larger businesses within that realm, like Gensler, who does much more than, you know, their planning, architecture, design, have taken the ESOP road. And I do think that there is room for, on the larger end, for founding owners who might be retiring to explore different ownership, shared ownership options that way. And then I think it's kind of points to what Nick was speaking about earlier, the potential for different innovative forms of shared ownership to really carry on the values that I think Ethan is speaking to.
Mm-hmm. And Nick, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on this topic. Is Nick still with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi. No, I mean, I think that's it. I think that's in some sense why we've been talking so much for the last year and researching and looking so much. I mean, when the need for a license in architecture, the sort of rules around it, like it's complicated. How these, you know, how liability and, you know, in the building industry is a very serious thing, you know, not to be taken lightly, and it's tied to, you know, licensure in many ways. And so, yeah, it's a model in which that, you know, again, that's why this idea of the cooperative network, I think, is so attractive, is that it lets you in the short term try to, you know, elevate some of these principles that you know, the other panelists are putting so well, like without the, you know, what the difficulty of becoming a real worker cooperative. Not that it's not possible, and they do exist out there, but it's another layer of complexity.
So another question is, and I'll throw it out again. I don't know, it might be more partners and partners. Let me just throw the question out, and you guys decide who might best answer it. The question is, can you give an example of a design solution you disagreed with your partners on, or your, you know, co-worker owners, and how you moved it forward in a positive way? Want to take a stab at that, Greg? Evica?
Yeah, I can. I mean, it's hard to answer a question like that because things like we already work so collaboratively that it's not usually a thing where we're like clashing on like a specific design, unless Greg can correct me and like provide a more concrete example. But I think, like, for example, like in a technical way, like if we have a client that we need to like design a logo for, we might approach it in a group way where, you know, 4 of us or 3 of us will each come up with, you know, some sketches and come together and provide feedback and kind of critique each other and then push those forward. So it kind of, in that way, you kind of avoid the like, well, I don't agree with that, and so we should do it this way. It's kind of more of like this collaborative process. And then once we narrow it down to like 3 solid sketches, then we can present those to the client, and usually they'll decide on one direction or a combination of 2 directions or something, and then one project lead will kind of push that project forward with that one design and keep developing it. So there's not a lot of instances where there's that like clashing of ideas or competition between the co-owners, if that makes sense. Unless Greg, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of examples where I disagreed a ton with no. I think there's a studio that is no longer a studio anymore called Grapus that talks about, I don't think that it has its own, values and whatever, but like they talk about a lot about like, leaving posters out on the table, and then every one of them, like every once in a while, in disinterested kind of casual way, would like pick up each other's work and work on it and then like leave it for another person. And it's like we'll be the roles in our studio are not stratified so that like there's a layer of management managing projects, and then there's like people doing design work, and then therefore there's where the disagreements and the kind of management of that stuff happens. I'll be working on a proposal one week and then also working on a design, and then Davika will be working on a proposal one week, and then I'll help her with her like some design project that she's leading. And I think that like it sounds kind of cheesy the way I'm describing it, but honestly, that's actually how it is happening right now. And honestly, that's like the kind of divvying up of work. And so there's no real, it's always additive and productive, never sort of like scolding or disagreements. We resolve that stuff pretty naturally, as if friends would resolve it.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I got so wrapped up in that, I kind of lost track of time. So I apologize for that. We do want to respect everybody's time. Thank you for those of you who stayed on with us, which is quite a bit. Thank you again to all of our wonderful speakers, and Sam, and everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everybody.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.